going to the tree.
Now this is just so odd because I'd usually have to agree that mouse and keyboard is the better choice, but on this game, there's a really strong case behind picking controller.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you our most dangerous contestant in the arena, El Homo!
How's it going, folks? Welcome back to the El Homo YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be diving into the long-winded, highly controversial controller versus keyboard debate. Now, folks, I know this is like bringing up Ronaldo versus Messi, putting a match to a diabolical fart, but I want you all to know that this isn't going to be a debate or a who's better type of video. No, what we're really doing here is taking a real practical look at how both of these devices perform in the finals and whether or not it's worth experimenting/deviating from your choice of input. The goal here is to give y'all something to think about. Maybe the weapon that you're maining isn't really suited to the device you use. To give some context, I play the finals on PC, but I choose to use controller. I've been using the sticks for well over a decade at this point, and I just love being able to keep that skill. Now, I've also played mouse and keyboard on a small number of games, mainly Overwatch and Battlefront, and while that may sound very limited, which it is, by the way, I still think I'm at the skill level to say that I know what I'm talking about. For example, on my second game with the mouse and keyboard, I managed to drop 37 kills with the revolver, probably all the hours as McCree kicking in there. I also decided for this challenge to hop onto a fresh account when using keyboard just to see what kind of kills I could average, and here were the results. With 336 eliminations in 19 games, we averaged roughly 17 or 18 kills per game, so pretty decent considering the strict loadouts. Without further hesitation, let's get into the challenge. Folks, I've decided the best way to test these devices is to try all the builds while selecting the right weapons. Obviously, melee weapons and things like grenade launchers or flamethrowers aren't a test for either controller or keyboard since they require zero aim. So for light, we'll look at the bow, the LH1 and the M11. This selection gives us a good range, precision with the bow, single fire multi-range with the LH1, and a close range strong recoil weapon with the M11. For medium, I picked the AKM, FCAR revolver, and Model 1887. For heavy, the M60 and Lewis gun should provide plenty to discuss. I don't think the heavy shotguns will add much more than the other weapons at this stage. All right, so the three categories that are going to define which device suits your game the most are 1, aim, 2, movement, and 3, actual performance/feel. Folks, I think there's no denying that mouse aim is going to be more accurate and add much more potential. However, with how strong the aim assist is in this game, combined with how crazy some of the recoil patterns are, I actually see a good controller player having a much easier time in being consistent with weapons such as the M11, FCAR, or Lewis gun. And then mouse players may have an easier time with weapons like the bow, the model, and the revolver. After putting the light weapons to test, I can fairly say that the bow is without a doubt 10 times easier and much more enjoyable to use on mouse and keyboard. It doesn't require a crazy amount of movement, but relies more on timing and lining the crosshair up preemptively, which is something that aim assist will not do for controller players. This type of pre-aiming and prediction is going to give controller a huge disadvantage because the aim assist obviously isn't going to kick in until you're aiming directly at the enemy. Now, moving on to the LH1 and M11, I've come to the conclusion that the LH1 is just about equal for both devices. At long range, mouse might be stronger, but not by that much from my experience. And at close range, the controller was far superior for me. This is what I'm talking about when I say that movement and genuine feel also need to be factored in here. The analog movement gave me a much easier time in strafing with this weapon, and you wouldn't have thought the LH1 could be so good on the sticks from a statistical perspective. Now, folks, the M11 was really weird for me. I've always considered this gun to be an S-tier weapon, and I'm surprised to see that many keyboard players don't pick it. I found it to be just as accurate on mouse and keyboard as on controller. However, when it came to movement, the controller absolutely shined. The close range clutches are vital with this gun, and while hip firing can be more consistent with a mouse, the superior movement with a controller makes this the best controller weapon in the game. And concluding my test with the light build on both controller and keyboard, I would have to say that both devices are completely viable. While keyboard will give you the ability to use any gun you want without worrying about being at a disadvantage, the controller will still offer a competitive choice. And so for me personally, I'll be using controller when I'm playing light, except for the occasions that I use the bow. I really can't use the bow on controller, so I'll have to switch over if I want to run it. For those medium mains out there, I think we've all come across other medium players, usually teammates, who we spectate and think to ourselves, why on earth are they using that weapon? He can't hit shit. And, well, to that, I can 100% say that there are some weapons that controller players should really stay away from on the medium class. So first of all, just to get the ARs out of the way, both the FCAR and AKM are great choices regardless of what you're using. The FCAR recoil at range can be a little intensive with a mouse, but for the most part, these weapons just require learning the recoil pattern and getting used to the mag sizes. Aim assist and decent movement will let any controller player shred lobbies with the FCAR or AKM, but looking at the model and revolver, this is where the problem starts. I genuinely reckon my aim is solid enough on controller to rock whatever weapon I want, but using these is just a test of my own luck, to be completely honest. I will 10 times out of 10 be using mouse when I use the shotgun or revolver from now on because the difference is night and day. I made the revolver feel like an entirely new weapon when trying it out for the first time on the keys, so I couldn't recommend it anymore to the controller players out there. If you have the chance, give it a go on mouse and you'll see the difference instantly, regardless of your skill level. Concluding the medium build test, I'll just say that mouse and keyboard is the superior choice. The movement advantage that controller offers will only help you with the automatic rifles, and even at that, you won't be at as much of an advantage as you would if you were running light. So overall, if you're a medium main, mouse and keyboard is the way to go. Finally, the heavy build test. Granted, I only use the Lewis and M60, which are the best heavy weapons, by the way. This build feels much weaker in Season 3, even just in terms of loadout choices. The weapons kind of feel like they all do the same thing. I had zero luck trying to aim at any kind of distance with both controller and mouse. When it came to close range fights, they felt roughly the same, but then getting to the mid-range combat, I couldn't help but feel like aim assist carried so much. The recoil update on the Lewis gun is crazy if you're using mouse and keyboard, and I really think the only reason I had more success with controller was the fact that the recoil wasn't as bad. The M60 fell into a similar situation, although it was much easier to control with both devices. Given that Heavy's range feels so much shorter in Season 3, I have to say that controller is simply nicer to play with. Absolutely nothing wrong with using mouse and keyboard with Heavy, but this is just preference. Unlike light or medium, where I could tell that there were clear advantages and disadvantages to either device, Heavy just feels like it has next to no skill gap for controller versus keyboard. Maybe the slug shotgun might offer a better experience for mouse players, but I personally won't be using that gun anyways. So folks, the ultimate conclusion to this test is completely dependent on what way you want to look at it. I like the idea that I now know where I'm going to have an advantage or disadvantage depending on what I use, and then choosing the right device for my current build. Since I play on PC, it's as easy for me as to just put the controller down and just switch over to mouse and keyboard when I decide to stop running the M11 and use the bow instead. This is one of the pleasures of modern gaming, and it is exactly what I'd recommend to anyone else out there who's in a similar situation. Now, if you want a definitive answer and just to hone in on one device, then sure, I can personally recommend keyboard to be the all-rounder and safest bet. If you're on console and are thinking about making the switch to PC, wondering whether or not you'll have to start from scratch learning mouse and keyboard, then I'd say absolutely make the switch to PC gaming, but don't worry about playing against keyboard players because controller is 100% viable in the finals. Even if you're struggling to learn keyboard, just stick to quick play while you're learning the keys and use controller for ranked so you can keep competing for diamond rank. All right now folks, that's all I have to say on the matter. I know some people take this topic to heart, so don't take offense from me not saying that we should pick a side, and if it isn't mouse and keyboard, that we should go back to 60 hertz. I hope you all enjoyed the breakdown, and if you have your own thoughts on the topic or experience using both devices that you'd like to share, then I'd love to hear it. Feel free to get a discussion going in the comments. As always folks, your presence is appreciated here, as are any ratings or follows. Thanks again for dropping in. Bye-bye now.